The restaurant was unusually quiet that evening, a calm that seemed almost unnatural for a Friday night. The warm glow of the overhead lights reflected off polished wooden tables, and soft jazz floated lazily from the corner speaker, blending with the low hum of the refrigeration units in the kitchen. Mia, a young waitress with fiery red hair tied back into a practical ponytail, moved swiftly between tables. She was known in the neighborhood for her sharp wit, infectious smile, and the uncanny ability to remember regular customers' orders without writing them down. Her shift had started like any other, balancing a tray of burgers and drinks in one hand, exchanging quick smiles with patrons as she walked with practiced precision. But tonight, something felt off. The chatter of the diners seemed tense, and she caught snippets of hurried conversations that sounded uneasy. Shrugging it off, she focused on her work. After all, a job was a job, and Mia had bills to pay. Then the door slammed open with a force that made everyone in the room startle. The small bell above the entrance didn't even ring. It had been shattered, lying in pieces on the floor. 3 men entered, their figures blocking the dim light from the street. They were tall, burly, and moved with a predatory confidence. Their faces were partially hidden beneath dark hoodies, but the malicious glint in their eyes was impossible to miss. The restaurant, once calm and cozy, felt suffocatingly tense. Mia's instincts immediately kicked in. She had seen trouble before, but something about these men made her stomach twist with dread. One of the thugs, a broad-shouldered man with a scar slicing across his cheek, pointed at her and sneered. "Hey, you!" he barked, his voice rough and commanding. "You think you can just serve food and look pretty while people like us wait?" Before she could step back, another thug lunged forward, his hands wrapping around her throat. The shock was instantaneous. Pain and panic shot through her chest, her breaths coming in short, sharp gasps. Patrons froze mid-chew, their eyes wide with fear. Someone shouted, but the words were lost in the panic. Mia's fingers clawed at the thug's arms, trying to push him away, but his grip was iron. "You're going to pay, little girl," the first thug growled, his face twisting into a cruel grin. "You think you can play smart in my city?" Mia's vision blurred with fear, but she refused to give up. She kicked at his legs, desperate to break free, but it was no use. The room was spinning, and the panic of the other diners was like a distant echo compared to the sharp, immediate terror in her chest. And then she noticed something in the corner of her eye. A group of bikers, sitting casually at a back table, had stopped their conversation and were now watching the scene unfold. At first she thought she was imagining it, but no. There they were, a dozen men and women, their leather jackets and tattoos making them look like they had stepped out of a completely different world. Engines of motorcycles roared in their imagination, even though the vehicles themselves were parked outside. Mia's mind raced. "Please, someone do something," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over her panicked gasps. But the bikers didn't rush forward immediately, they simply observed. And yet the presence of their watchful eyes was strangely comforting. It was as if a storm was brewing, and she could sense that the storm was about to strike, but on her side. The tallest biker, a man with a silver beard and piercing blue eyes, slammed his fist on the table, making the diners jump. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm, but carried a weight of authority that seemed to vibrate through the air. "Let her go." The thug tightened his grip for a moment, misreading the calm for weakness. But the biker didn't move. He simply stood, the sheer size of him and the confidence in his stance demanding attention. Other bikers rose as well, their movements fluid and synchronized, like a team who had done this 100 times before. The scuffle intensified. Mia struggled to breathe, tears stinging her eyes. Her hands clawed at the thug's arms, her nails scratching his skin, but he didn't release her. The other 2 thugs noticed the bikers standing and laughed, thinking it was just a bluff. Who's going to stop us? A bunch of wannabe tough guys eating dinner? One of them jeered. But they didn't know what they were dealing with. The biker with the silver beard didn't rush, didn't yell. He simply moved a few steps closer, and the room seemed to shrink around him. His presence alone made the thugs hesitate. The other bikers flanked him silently, each one exuding danger in a quiet, controlled way. Mia's heart raced. She couldn't help but feel a strange mix of hope and disbelief. Are they really going to help me? She thought. One of the bikers, a woman with a sleeve of intricate tattoos and short black hair, gave a barely perceptible nod to her companions. That was all it took. In an instant, the air seemed charged, electric, as if everyone in the restaurant could feel the shift. The first thug's grip loosened slightly as he glanced at his companions, who were now visibly tense. The confidence that had fueled them just moments ago was waning. The bikers didn't move fast. They didn't need to. Their mere presence, their calm and lethal control, was enough to make the thugs reconsider their actions. Mia, still gasping, felt the first real hope in her chest. The pain in her throat was intense, but the possibility of escape was closer than it had ever been. She dug her heels into the floor, pushing back with every ounce of strength she had left. The scar-faced thug cursed and finally released her, staggering slightly backward in surprise. The restaurant exhaled collectively. Some diners whispered prayers, others stared wide-eyed. Mia's chest heaved, tears streaming down her cheeks, but a small smile crept across her face. She had survived, at least for now. The bikers remained in position, scanning the room and ensuring the thugs wouldn't try anything foolish again. Their eyes met briefly, a silent communication passing between them. It was clear they were ready for whatever came next. Mia straightened her posture, trying to regain her composure. Her hands were trembling, her heartbeat thundering in her ears, but she felt something she hadn't felt before: safety. Not the kind you feel from a lock on a door or a security camera, but the kind that comes from knowing someone powerful is watching your back. The scar-faced thug backed toward the door, casting one last bitter glance at the bikers and Mia. The other two hesitated, looking between the bikers and their fallen companion, unsure if they wanted to test this sudden, terrifying force. And, in that pause, Mia realized something important. Courage didn't always come from strength alone. Sometimes it came from having allies who were unstoppable. The door slammed shut behind the thugs as they finally fled, leaving the restaurant shaken but intact. Mia sank against the counter, exhausted, and the biker with the silver beard approached her slowly. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low but steady, carrying a weight of sincerity. Mia nodded, still catching her breath, words failing her. "Don't worry," he said, his eyes scanning the room once more. "They won't be back, not while we're here." Ooh, and with that, the tension in the restaurant began to lift. Mia knew her life had changed that evening. Something had been awakened. A realization that sometimes, when danger comes unexpectedly, heroes ride in on motorcycles, not capes. The restaurant still hummed with the echoes of the chaos that had just unfolded. Plates lay shattered on the floor, chairs were overturned, and the lingering scent of fear mixed with the aroma of fried food. Mia's chest heaved as she tried to steady her breathing, but every nerve in her body remained alert, as if danger could strike again at any moment. The bikers had returned to their table, though they no longer looked casual. Their eyes scanned the restaurant and the street beyond the windows, calculating, measuring, waiting. Every movement they made radiated authority, a quiet but undeniable message. They were in control. Mia's gaze fell on the thugs. The three men were huddled near the door, licking their wounds, both physical and ego. The tallest one, the scar-faced thug, glared at the bikers with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "This isn't over," he spat, shaking his fists. One of the bikers, a young man with a shaved head and a sleeve of tattoos depicting flames and skulls, leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression calm but lethal. "It's over for you," he said simply, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "You chose to mess with the wrong people tonight." The other thugs shuffled uneasily, realizing that they had miscalculated the situation entirely. They had thought the bikers were just a bunch of diners enjoying a night out, not a coordinated force capable of instant retaliation. Every instinct screamed at them to run, but pride and fear tangled in a dangerous knot, freezing them in place. Mia, still catching her breath, watched in awe as the bikers rose from the table once again. They didn't rush forward with violence immediately. They moved with precision, controlled purpose. One biker grabbed a fallen chair and wielded it as a barrier, positioning himself between the thugs and the restaurant's patrons. Another picked up a mop and held it like a spear, his stance balanced and ready. Then it happened. The first thug, thinking himself brave, took a step forward, reaching as if to intimidate the bikers. The moment his hand left his side, the world seemed to move faster. The bikers acted as one. In a blur, the thug was grabbed by the arms and slammed against the wall with a force that rattled the framed paintings hanging above. Pain shot through his body, and he fell to the ground, groaning. The other two thugs turned to flee, but the bikers anticipated every move. One of them, a woman with short black hair and a sleeve of tattoos, blocked the exit with a menacing stance, her eyes cold and unyielding. Another biker positioned himself to cut off any attempt to escape. The restaurant, once a place of calm and laughter, had transformed into a battlefield, but a battlefield where the rules were clear. Justice, swift and uncompromising, was being served. Mia could hardly believe what she was witnessing. The bikers moved with the efficiency of trained warriors. No punches were wasted, no movements sloppy. Within moments, the thugs were incapacitated, sprawled across the floor, or pressed against walls, nursing bruises and humiliation. The patrons who had initially frozen now whispered in awe, some even applauding quietly, though fear kept them from moving closer. The silver-bearded leader approached the scar-faced thug who had first attacked Mia. He knelt slightly, bringing himself to eye level with the man, and spoke in a low, dangerous tone. "You pick on someone weaker than you, thinking it's a game. Remember this, next time we won't be watching quietly." The thug swallowed hard, his bravado gone, replaced by pure terror. One by one, the bikers ensured the thugs were unable to cause any further harm. They weren't reckless. They didn't enjoy violence, but there was a strict, unspoken code they followed. Injustice would not stand in their presence. Mia, still shaken, finally stepped forward, her legs trembling. I don't know how to thank you," she stammered, her voice shaky but sincere. The scarlet flush of adrenaline still lingered on her cheeks. The silver-bearded biker looked at her, his piercing blue eyes softening slightly. "You don't need to thank us," he said. "Some of us don't just eat here. We protect." His words hit her harder than anything else that night. She had always imagined heroes as caped figures in movies or storybooks. But here they were, leather jackets, motorcycles, tattoos, scars, and yet more heroic than any fantasy she'd ever known. As the bikers helped her steady herself, the restaurant slowly returned to normal. Staff began picking up broken plates, while patrons whispered among themselves, some casting wary glances at the fleeing thugs. Yet even as the noise returned, the presence of the bikers loomed, a silent reminder that this night had changed everything. The scar-faced thug and his companions, now outside, glanced back one last time. Fear was etched on their faces. They had learned a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Their arrogance had been crushed by people they had underestimated, and the realization stung more than any bruise. Inside, Mia found herself drawn to the bikers' table once more. She noticed small details, the way they communicated with subtle gestures, the respect they commanded with mere presence, the quiet camaraderie among them. These weren't just people. They were a unit, bound together by loyalty and principles that transcended words. The silver-bearded leader rose from the table and approached Mia. "It's going to be okay now," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "They won't bother you again." She nodded, overwhelmed but grateful. I thought I was done for," she admitted, tears threatening to spill again. "You weren't," he replied. "Not while we were here." For the first time that night, Mia felt safe. Her pulse slowly returned to normal, and the fear that had gripped her chest finally loosened. She looked around the restaurant, at the faces of the patrons, and realized something remarkable. In the chaos, a sense of community had emerged. Fear had turned into awe, panic had turned into respect, and a terrifying moment had transformed into a story that no one would forget. The bikers, now settling back into their seats, shared quiet smiles and nods. They didn't need applause or thanks. Their satisfaction came from knowing justice had been served. Mia watched them with admiration, understanding that their world operated by rules far different from her own. They didn't wait for permission to act. They acted because it was the right thing to do. As the night wore on, the restaurant slowly regained its rhythm. The jukebox played soft music, chairs were reset, and servers moved with careful efficiency. But Mia knew that the events of the evening had left an indelible mark. Something inside her had shifted, a newfound awareness that courage, loyalty, and protection sometimes arrived in the most unexpected forms. When the bikers finally left, engines roaring into the night, Mia stood near the window, watching them disappear down the street. She felt a strange mixture of relief, awe, and inspiration. That night, she realized that true heroes didn't always wear capes. Sometimes they rode in on motorcycles, silent but unstoppable, leaving a trail of justice and respect behind them. And as she returned to her duties, she knew one thing for certain: life was unpredictable. Danger was real, but courage could appear when you least expected it. All it took was a group of people willing to stand for what was right. No matter the cost, the story of that night would live on, whispered among patrons, remembered by the staff, and forever etched in Mia's memory, a testament to the unexpected heroes who arrived just in time.